And, I'm off to the right. And off to the left. No, off to the right. There we go. Hello, good evening, everybody. I'm confusing my left and my right. It's very difficult to manage. Anyway, welcome back to the stream. It's Monday. It is time to talk about science fiction and fantasy stuff and writing and all that kind of good creative things, which is why we're here. This is what we do. Excellent. And it's good to have everybody along as per usual on a Monday evening where we eventually try and get around to discussing the finer points of being creative and doing writing stuff. Winter Muse is here, Biffboy81 is here, Commander J1988 is here, Glenn Commander Terra Firma is here, Sean O'Connor is here, Winnie1974 is here, J69713PB is here. Commander Dash Jim is here as well. Time to talk about Wolves. It is indeed. Aegis Bearer is here as well. So welcome one and welcome all. And welcome to all of you who watch on YouTube after the event. I know there's a few of you who can't make things in live time because of the nature of this spherical planet that we all live on. Apologies for the doorbell. That's my wife doing stuff. It's still nothing to do with my stream. It's just a doorbell. Okay. People arriving. Anyway, that's all good. So how have we all been? It's been a busy had quite a busy weekend this weekend with various bits and pieces. We had a Remembrance service, of course, on Sunday. So for those of you UK, it probably won't need much introduction. I don't know if it's something that travels the world or not. Does my wife sell Tupperware? You're dating yourself, Winnie. Nobody uses Tupperware anymore. Probably hasn't used Tupperware for like a decade at least, surely. No, our doorbell is a very friendly thing. Tupperware. Dear. Yeah, there were Tupperware parties, weren't there? I've never been to one, but I've heard about. Well, I've heard of them. Well, that was the thing. What did people do at Tupperware parties? Did they go round to each other's houses and put things in and out of plastic thing? How do you have a Tupperware party? I remember the phrase. I can't imagine what you would do at a Tupperware party. Oh look, I can put things in a box and seal the lid. Wow. Oh, you can do that too. I think Tupperware is still out there. Is it? Says that. Now my wife runs a mindfulness thing, so she has some folks around and they do mindful stuff. Yeah, it's good for cleaning your brain out a little bit, I think, sometimes. So that's what she does. So while I'm waffling along, she's actually doing something constructive. They were covered for swingers. I see you. Sort of seal the appeal now. Sean O'Connor, so each, slightly sensitive. Each country does have a day of Remembrance, not on the same day. So the UK celebrates it's on the 11th of November, which is obviously last week. But we have Remembrance Sunday, which is where the church services kind of pick it up. And there's an odd connection there between church and remembering the people who died in mostly the First and Second World Wars, although they do add extra bits and pieces in. So that's, we were involved with the gap quite a bit on Sunday because my son is in the cadets, and so he was parading around helping with various bits and pieces as part of that. So it's it was an unusual experience for me because I had to go to church on Sunday. I find church quite an interesting experience nowadays. But there we go. So I think Tupperware is still out there, but it has many imitators. I had no idea Tupperware was still going. November the 11th in the US is Veterans Day, formerly Armistice Day. So we still call it Armistice Day, actually, I think. And Remembrance Sunday is the Sunday following the Armistice Day. So it's the point in 1918, I think, in the First World War, when the guns stopped on the 11th hour, the 11th day of the 11th month. That's Armistice Day. So I think that's what we still call it Armistice Day, I think. We in 1974 sold cheap plastic tubs after plying your victims with cheap Prosecco. That sounds about right. So maybe it's all about the wine. That makes more sense. We sold Tupperware parties as a cover for wife swapping. Gonna have to keep an eye on these things, aren't they? Hi all, says DJ Squibby. So there we are. JL here says we have had great fun this year because the local council decided in their infinite wisdom not to hold the commemoration at the town war memorial. Our church had to take the reins and do it essentially ourselves so as not to disappoint literally everyone. Well, that's a bit weird. So why did the local council decide not to do it? So that's a bit, that's a bit strange. The interesting thing is, I mean, I don't know if it's the same in why is it called wife swapping rather than husband swapping? Yeah. I suppose it depends on who initiates the swapping. I don't know. Having never done either, I'm entirely innocent of what might be involved. So that's how we managed to get. That's just a symptom of this stream, actually. That we've managed to go all the way from Tupperware to wife swapping from Armistice Day. I mean, it's pretty impressive, actually. We've only been running for 5 minutes. Dear. It was a particular councillor who likes to make a big deal. Oh, well, there's always a bit of politics involved, isn't there? Oh, there we go. Tupperware, Pampered Chef. Pampered Chef, yes. Actually, we've had Pampered Chef over here. Amway, what's the other one where women sell cosmetics to each other? I have no idea. They seem to like that sort of thing. I don't know. Candles. There's a lot of candles. Lots of scented candles. I mean, I find the perfume in these things really, really too strong for my nose. I don't know if I've got Avon. No, Avon. That's it. Avon calling. I find the scented. There's an awful lot of scented candles, particularly this time of year. Actually, as you sort of run down into Christmas, there's a lot of scented candles. Scented candles seem to be a thing, and they've got some very, very exotic fragrances. That I can't even pronounce most of them. And I don't know. They just seem incredibly, incredibly strong. There used to be a shop. I think was it called Body Shop or something like that? Anyway, I couldn't get anywhere close to it because I would literally asphyxiate on the way in. And my wife would be quite happy wandering around looking at all the different candles and these little scented bottles of thing. And I'd be choking to death in the corner, desperately struggling to get back to the entrance. Lush, Bath and Body Works. It's those, Lush. I think Lush has definitely been one of them. So I've been to one of those, and I can't get into the shop. I mean, the aromas are just overwhelming to me. Body Shop, but I'm pretty sure it was a Body Shop. There was an awful lot. There was a period where everything was a little canister of stuff, and you'd pour it over potpourri, or it was just seemed to be that collection of dead leaves, as far as I could work out. And you put these scents in. It's supposed to make your house smell nice. Whereas, as far as it could be, it was this unbreathable miasma of stuff. And I don't know whether it's. I hesitate to try and be sexist about this and say that maybe that's a girl's thing, stroke a boy's thing, but I literally cannot breathe properly when I'm in those places. And I don't know whether or not some people are a bit more sensitive to odours than others. I've heard tell that there is a certain number of people who are excessively sensitive to smell and to taste, and don't like strong odours at all. And I don't know if I fall into that category or not, but I don't. It's interesting enough that my wife absolutely adores Marmite and things like that. And I mean, I can't stand Marmite. Anything that it's just like eating salt as far as I'm concerned. Really, really, really strong tastes I struggle with as well, and really, really strong smells. I'm just like. So it's a reason for me to hang outside and, I don't know, look at an electronics store or something. Good thing about electronics is generally they don't smell too bad, and if they do smell bad, then something busted. So I don't know. Best hair brushes ever from Body Shop. See, I could live long enough to get to the hairbrushes. So Winning 1974 is suffering for me as well. So I don't know, it's just too strong. Marmite's designed to do that, is it? I really. I mean, and Bovril actually. I mean, so Marmite is what, vegetable extract. I don't know what it actually means, vegetable extract. It doesn't sound very pleasant. And Bovril is beef extract. Now it sort of vaguely sounds like the sort of thing I actually might like, but I've tried. It's It's just, well, a friend of mine doesn't like it either. He just calls it wasp poo. Which, to be honest, I think it's reasonable. It's a pretty evil substance, I think. Marmite. So no, I don't like it. Well, you see, and that's the interesting thing, actually. Yeah. So chili, anything with a bit of heat in it, I'm okay with a bit of heat. My wife can't stand heat at all. Yeah, anything with a bit of heat in it. She's definitely, no, she's not into that at all. Whereas I don't like a super stupidly hot curry, but I like a reasonably hot curry, and that's okay. I don't find that overwhelms my taste buds at all. But certain flavours do. Marmite can do one. Vegemite is disgusting, and I would rather eat my. I don't think I'll be able to tell the difference between Vegemite and Marmite at all. I just assumed Vegemite was like a Australian version of Marmite. Is it something else? You concentrate a candle. How hot do you want it? Wasn't actually going to eat the candle when it was light. It was just the scent of the candle. Eating. It's just general consumer advice, everybody. Eating candles when they're alight is generally bad. In fact, eating candles at all is pretty stupid. So don't do that. Okay, just because it smells nice, don't eat it. All right, and especially even if it's on fire. This is sensible consumer advice. As we're in the run up to Christmas, I think it's only sensible to highlight the dangers of eating candles. Okay, don't. It's not going to work. I worked in a brewery, says Alan, and the section that recovered the yeast to send to Marmite was very grotty. So he's not selling it to me at all. I don't think I could tell the difference between Vegemite and my own feet. I think that's saying more about your feet, actually, than it is about Vegemite. I don't know. I don't think I've even never tried Vegemite. Just sounds wrong. She just smiled and gave me a Vegemite sandwich. Well, that's the line, isn't it? What's that from? Is that from Men at Work? That song. That one. I don't even know what the song is. Is that Men at Work? Oh no, Land Down Under. Who's it by? They come from a land down under. Dear, 80 songs we love. It's one of those sort of one-hit wonders, that song, wasn't it? I'm not quite sure where this conversation is going. You can keep Vegemite in a nice airtight Tupperware container. So there is a use case for Tupperware. It was Men at Work. Excellent. Now hang on, no, Safety Dance was something else. Safety Dance was the ding 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 do 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 do, that one. Was it not a one-hit wonder? I'm confused. No, hang on, Safety Dance was not the same as that one. That's not quite right. So come on, someone needs to do some Google on that and find out who did Safety Dance. Yeah, I was going to say Safety Dance was Men in Hats. That's right. And who did Men Without Hats? That's right, Men Without. Yeah, so I'm confused now. Which one's which? I get a copyright infringement for doing my do-do-dos. Yeah, so surely Men in Hats was the do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Your friends can't dance, and if they can't dance, then they're no friends of mine. That's definitely Men in Hats, right? So hang on a minute. So Vegemite's on it is Men at Work. Oh, Men Without Hats. You're confused now. I like both of those songs. I'm a man with a hat, yeah, so I can't help it. Keep it in a Tupperware container and engage him in a wife swapping to get this far away as possible. Which ties up everything very well. I think that's really good. Dear. I do like you guys being around. You cheer me up. It's very, very good. So there's two 80s songs we've now conflated, along with the Tupperware, along with the Vegemite sandwich. Together. So yes, where was I? No idea. Men at Work also did Who Can It Be Now? Men at Work did have a few hits, not just one. Okay, so I must admit I'm not really a connoisseur of Men at Work's hits, so I'm gonna have to check them out now. Fortunately, we have a YouTube nowadays that we can go and look at those things. So, but I do remember. Imagine the men at work were also men in hats. Depending on what job they were doing, I suppose. Men in hard hats. Health and safety, exactly. It's an epic, quite an epic distraction you've done there tonight, guys. I was starting off with a vaguely serious point about the armistice, and we quickly dissolved into Vegemite. So never mind. But it was trying to get back on the vaguely serious point. I was struck actually by the association between the village people wearing hats at work with men, the village men wearing hats at work, something like that. Amazing sci-fi talk. Yeah, I know. The nice thing about sci-fi is we can load up the Vegemite onto spaceships and fire it into the sun. Yes, maybe that sounds like a worthwhile endeavour actually, to get rid of all the Vegemite on the planet. But there are the people who like Vegemite and Marmite, so they're very, very, very strange individuals. My wife being one of them, she likes Marmite, and we just agree to disagree on that particular topic, to the point at which she's putting it on her toast, and I'm just like, just other side of the kitchen, please. Because I'm a jam on toast kind of guy, you know. That's what jam is the only thing that's supposed to go on toast. Or if I'm being posh, preserves. Vegemite is rocket fuel. Yeah, no, we must be able to use Vegemite for something. What's this stuff caked in the inside of the rocket exhaust? Well, that's the emergency backup fuel supply, causes an interstellar war. Yeah. See, it's just creativity. It's perfect. Yeah, there's an intergalactic shortage of Vegemite. And the entire cargo bay will be filled up with Tupperware, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, so you could just rewrite all the science fiction movies that ever have been and just replace key elements with Vegemite. Vegemite is the mechanism for travelling through space. The Marmite melange. Good stuff. Use the Marmite, Luke. I was going into Darcy Station to pick up some jam. You can waste time with your friends when the Marmite's done. Yeah, we could probably have a long replace key phrases in various different movies with Marmite or Vegemite. Is Marmite canon? Well, I mean, we'd have to have some law discussions of Marmite then, wouldn't we, to decide. Nobody's putting Marmite on my waffles, by the way. That's just wrong. Okay, maybe maple syrup. Fire the Wagar. Marmite the entire side from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. Dear. That's a very good one. Is the Marmite canon? Well, of course, our canon's canon. Can't change the laws of Vegemite. Yeah, so we can have an awful lot of fun substituting Marmite into all sorts of things. Right. Attempting to now generally move in the direction of a topic. Because I think there's a very, 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 very small handful of people who watch this stream hoping for some serious advice, but at some point, maybe there are. It's definitely Marmite Jim, but not always. So I was watching over the last week a kind of documentary. Well, it wasn't really a documentary. It was kind of a documentary. It's definitely a Marmite stream tonight. Take it or leave it. Some people like it, some people don't. Yep. I've unleashed something here, haven't I? I'm gonna just have to Just gonna let you roll with it for a while. I think I'm just gonna not talk. I think maybe about 5 minutes. Let you get it all out of your system. Was it a documentary on extracting yeast? No, it wasn't. Dear. It was actually. It was actually a documentary. Don't you always start trouble when I go for that? Yes, I know. It isn't entirely my fault. I completely accept 100% of the blame. It's the Marmite tour. Yes, it's definitely going to be. It definitely is going to be a Marmite tour. Actually, you're quite right. Joking aside, dear, Winnie 1974. Yes, Cry Havoc. I've lost it, I think. Glenn's struggling here. Glenn fires in a salvo of common sense. One more off topic. I received and read Gianna's new novel, From the Grave of the Gods. Read it in 5 days. Wow, that's pretty good for you. Must be a record for me, because it's a pretty big book actually. So 5 days is good. And it was a terrific 5 stars. Yes, I saw that Glenn had written up a review. So thanks for doing that, because we did discuss reviews. Was it last week or the week before? And how valuable they are to an author, both in terms of just kind of announcing the book is there, and also kind of a shot in the arm for it was worth spending all that time writing this book because somebody actually read it. So congratulations to GL1988 for obviously writing the book, and thanks to Glenn for reading it and putting a review. That's really good. It is a big book. Yeah, it is quite a long book, and there's more to come. So we're now waiting with bated breath to find out what happens next, which will be good. So the topic. Desperately wrestling the stream back on track. The topic I was intrigued by, because I hadn't really thought about it much. Stop it, Winnie. Just stop it. Game of Bovril. Game of Tupperware, surely. Dum dum da da dum dum. You could sort of tap it out on the box. No, stop it. Right. I saw a documentary on UFOs, and I haven't thought about UFOs for many a long year, because I kind of thought the whole thing had been discredited. Because I mean the entire thing with UFOs is that, of course, it's aliens come, it's aliens come to visit us from far off places, and as a sort of vaguely competent amateur astronomer, I'm kind of like in the case of, well, no, I mean, aliens, are they? If there are aliens, are they likely to be hanging around, isolated parts of the planet, teasing people by flashing lights at them, occasionally abducting them, or just leaving strange messages and crop circles and things. However, the document, I can't remember where I watched it, but the documentary is actually quite interesting because, and I think Dunpeel sort of mentioned it, is the governments are now releasing quite a lot of information about potential UFOs. Now, we do have to be a little bit careful of auditioning, because UFO actually, obviously, and somebody will tell me off, and probably already has actually. I just knocked something on the floor. What was that? Sorry. Something just fell off something. So, a UFO is an unidentified flying object, so it doesn't necessarily at all imply extraterrestrial origin. It's easy to conflate UFO with flying saucer, which of course is, again, back to, potential aliens investigating things. But what was quite interesting from some of the stuff that I saw, there was a bunch of stuff that I saw in the documentary that I thought to myself, well, if I had seen that, I would have been, because I'm a very sceptical chap. I don't, despite being a great fan of fantasy and science fiction, I'm extremely sceptical. Okay, I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in aliens, in the sense of aliens flying around the earth doing weird stuff. I don't believe in fantasy. I don't believe in non-corporeal existence, so I don't believe in ghosts or spirits or anything like that. And that's just me. Now, if you do believe that, that's absolutely fine. I'm not telling you what do you believe. This is what I believe. I believe that what we perceive is what there is, and I do appreciate that. our senses can be tricked and we're good at seeing patterns and all those kind of things. And I don't believe in life after death and all those other bits and pieces that associate with things like that. Now, again, your mileage may differ, right? That's entirely your environment. But I've seen the odd thing in the sky when I've gone, what the hell's that? But there's always been a rational explanation. And once I saw something that I really didn't know what it was, and it did throw me a little bit. And it turned out to be, before they were popular and then before they were unpopular. Do you remember those little floating lantern things where you put kind of like a little special candle in the bottom and it's a small inflatable kind of paper bag basically, and it floats up on its own, so like a paper lantern. And I hadn't seen one of those before at long distance, and I saw one of those rising up in the mist, and with stars coming in the background at probably, I don't know, a couple of miles away, many years ago. I remember thinking, what the hell is that? Because I was like, well, hang on a minute, that's not a star because it's moving. It's very, very bright for any kind of astronomical object, and it's moving way too quick to be an astronomical object, so it must be a plane. But it's not a plane because it's there's no navigation lights, there's no and I was like, I didn't have any binoculars with it, I literally just had the naked eye and I didn't know what I was seeing. It wasn't until the following day when I was kind of researching what it possibly could have been that I came, Chinese lanterns, exactly. That did, it was very disconcerting for me at that point, because I was thinking to myself, I'd pretty much felt that anything I could see in the sky I could explain. And I remember being thrown by it a little bit, by going, okay, there's something in the sky that's doing some stuff. It clearly is there because I can see it, and I'm pretty confident in my ability to see something in the sky. And I didn't know what it was. It did have a rational explanation. I knew it would. But now, some of the stuff that showed up on this documentary, I was like, oh, hang on a minute. Well, that's... If I'd seen that, and some of it was apocryphal stuff, and I tend to, not being funny to anybody, if somebody says they've seen a UFO, unless they've got a photo of it that I can look at, I'm kind of like, I'm polite, but I'm kind of like, whereas some of the stuff actually had photographic evidence. Now, when you've got a photograph of something, or a video at least of something, then it my kind of threshold of kind of acceptance is like, okay, well, you got something interesting now, some of those things I was looking at, well, if that's actual real footage, which you sometimes you have to check that, but it seemed to be in the case of the documentary, and I was like, what the hell is that? And there's weird stuff. Obviously, there's weird stuff that happens in these kind of things. Anyway, so just going back on the chat because people have been chatting. So Navy footage has been released in the last few years, says Man vs. Books, definitely has. They're not called UFOs now, but unidentified aerial phenomena. So UAPs. Not to be confused with OAPs. They're very different. But UFO does not necessarily mean alien. No, that's Dumpy. You're exactly right. Yep. J9 says, if you know a UFO is a UFO, it's just a FO. Careful. And when it lands, it's just an O. So if it's a flying object, unidentified flying object that you've now defined as an unidentified flying object, it's therefore been identified as an unidentified flying object, therefore it's no longer unidentified. Yes, okay. And if it lands, it's no longer flying. It's just an object. Very good. Sean says, if aliens are looking for intelligent life, they messed up coming to Earth. Yep. Osland says, absolutely guarantee if there are actually any aliens coming to this planet, they're not looking to do us any good. Well, that's interesting. Okay, we'll come back to that one. That's quite good. Have a boo-boos here. Hello, good to see you. There's UFOs and there's UFO. All the sources in that series were definitely flying ones. Yes, that's true. Prefer ELO. Yes, I quite like ELO as well. Good band. So Chinese lanterns. Yeah, so that was my example. Now I've got a friend of mine who saw a UFO, and the way he described it, to me it sounded like a drone, seen at night. But he maintains it wasn't a drone, and we've kind of kind of agreed to disagree on the interpretation of it. He thinks he saw a genuine, unexplained UFO, i.e. it wasn't an aircraft, it wasn't a drone, it wasn't a Chinese lantern, it wasn't a meteorological phenomenon, all those kind of things. He claims he's seen some kind of craft in the sky. Now, he has no evidence of it, so, as Carl Sagan was fond of saying, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and without extraordinary evidence, then I'm kind of like, I think you saw a drone. But, I respect the fact that he's also an astronomer, and would generally know what he was looking at in the sky. So there are odd things that appear in the sky, and other people, the Kazakh. I did see a UFO when I was in the army on manoeuvres. UFO, I can't explain what I saw with any known terrestrial vehicle phenomenon. So exactly, the Kazakh. You're exactly right. So there are people who have seen things. Now, are those? The documentaries seem to suggest that an awful lot of them fell into the military equipment category, i.e., confidential, top secret craft that the military won't admit to, that have capabilities beyond anything that we would normally expect to see in the sky. I have no idea whether the military has like super ultra cool aerial reconnaissance things, and they occasionally deploy those accidentally into places where people spot them. But there does seem to be an awful lot of secrecy involved in some of the UFO sightings. So that one's quite interesting. Chris is here as well. Hello, Chris, and Lucky Luigi. Hello. Once I was sailing in dense fog and a bright light appeared. It looked very close and shining red, and I had no clue what to make of it. And it was the moon rising. So there can be very strange things. You can get turned about. If you get slightly confused by where you are and the conditions you're in. So there are those sort of things. UFO sightings also. The documentary made an interesting point that the UFO sightings are quite often linked to the context of the society that they're in. So, UFO sightings seem to have peaked in the sort of 50s, 60s, and early 70s when the threat of, geopolitical change and stuff that was going on at the time was uppermost in people's minds, and they seem to have dropped recently. So that's interesting. Also now with the number of mobile phones that people own, the actual photographic evidence of UFOs doesn't seem to have risen as you might expect if the if these phenomena were as commonplace as we perhaps thought they were. So that's interesting. Unidentified landed objects, says Glenn. If UFO sightings were a really secret project, surely governments would encourage the thought. The fact they deny it so strong makes you think there might be something. Well, that's the problem. You see, or is it reverse psychology? It's difficult to tell with the government, isn't it? The Kazakh says, what I saw was similar to a rocket being fired up at a 40-degree angle upwards, but had a constant white flight. Where an artillery shell or rocket would eventually change course due to gravity, this object continued straight on course for over 2 minutes until the light came too weak to see at a distance. To this day, I don't know what it was. Wintermute has seen things that you wouldn't believe, presumably attack ships off the shoulder of Orion. I'm kidding. Shadow Wyvern says, as I recall, when the Nighthawk stealth fighter was being tested, it was mistaken by Skywatch as a UFO. Yeah, and so I think military stuff is potentially is a potential cause of these kind of things. Glenn and Alan are now quoting from. Was that's Dumbo, isn't it? Is that right? bit of Disney there. So it peaked in the hippie era, the happy hippie era, drug experimentation. Well, I think I don't know. It could be. I mean, because people do see things, and human beings are very good at wish fulfillment. Whether it comes from aliens or whether it comes from seeing the ghosts of dead relatives, or hearing voices that give you encouraging thoughts, or actually sometimes the other way around. So that is. I think that is definitely a thing. Our brains are not reliable witnesses. And if we've got an upbringing or a social context or all those other bits and pieces which basically sort of primes us to be, expecting things, because none of us are totally rational. This is some of us are very, very far from totally rational. So depending on what you believe, if you really fundamentally believe that fairies are at the bottom of the garden, the chances are you may see one, and you may genuinely believe that you have actually seen one, because as far as you're concerned, you did. Your brain has a record of the incident. Now, whether or not it was actually there is a different thing. I once saw a bright flash of blue light in the night sky like a streak, except it appeared to go upwards. Very possible it could have been a bright meteor, but it didn't behave like I expected it to. Oslo 1973, the best part about mobile phones, it makes it a lot easier to capture stuff, but it makes it a hell of a lot easier to fix it too. So yeah, and the problem is nowadays is you can't believe anything, can you? It's very, very hard because CGI technology is so impressive. Just because there's a video of something means nothing nowadays. I mean, I've seen a video of a dinosaur, so it was pretty realistic. How do you authenticate something easily nowadays? It's much more tricky now with the technology that's at our disposal, because you can look at car adverts and things, and the cars in them, and you just, well, it's some guy driving a car, right? I mean, it's not. It's all CGI. You can't tell the difference. Isn't the main UFO sighting rich area in the UK where flight paths from like 3 airports converge? So I think a lot of them are going to fall into the, I mean, if you take the obvious categories, airplanes, okay? So airplanes seen in unusual configurations for whatever reason. Meteorological phenomena, there are weird cloud formations that happen occasionally. There are, you've got the temperature inversions and things like that reflect light in strange places and give sort of, airborne mirages, all those sort of things. You've got, wacky lightning, even things like ball lightning, which I'm not sure are actually a genuine phenomenon or not, but I've heard of them, floating balls of electricity. I don't quite know how that would work, but that's a phenomenon that I have heard of, which could explain all sorts of things. Then you've obviously got astronomical phenomena for the people who are not familiar with things like meteors and the planet Venus or anything like that. All sorts of stuff that is, perfectly reasonable to expect a UFO report to come from people who don't necessarily know what they're looking at. Airborne mirages, I think the French have those. Do they still fly those? And people see the Loch Ness Monster, and the Loch Ness Monster. Actually, I went to Loch Ness last year and didn't see the Loch Ness Monster, I'm afraid. But interesting enough, we did go to a museum about the Loch Ness Monster, and the people in the museum really downplayed. I was quite surprised, actually. I thought they'd sort of hype it up as much as possible because, maybe tourism. But actually, they were very measured about it. They said, no, there's almost no possibility that there's anything weird living in these waters because, one, there isn't anything for this thing to eat. Actually, the whole Loch Ness Monster thing is quite interesting because it's a body of water which isn't connected to the mainland sea. It's fresh water, and because it's fresh, not a great deal lives in it. There aren't many fish hardly at all, in fact, in Loch Ness. The water is close to organically quite sterile because not very much lives in it. There aren't many nutrients in there for anything to grow with, so there simply isn't enough to sustain a monster. Just in terms of what it has to eat, unless it eats humans, going out to search for it, but it seems unlikely. So they were kind of like, we are pretty 99.99999% certain there is no monster in the lake. But come along to our museum. So that was quite interesting. Computer animation is so good, and Photoshop editors can make any image up. And it's been like that for years. And even a genuine undoctored image can appear to be something. And we're very, we want to believe, right? I'd love there to be a Loch Ness monster. I'd love there to be space aliens hanging around, just sort of poking fun at us. But the rational part of my brain says, the chances of those things are incredibly unlikely. They're so unlikely. They're just not going to be. I mean, why would they be there? Why would aliens be hanging around? I mean, obviously Douglas Adams came up with the best explanation for alien space stations visiting the Earth, which is basically they're teenagers who pinched their dad's spaceship and are just hanging around just for a laugh, on primitive planets, causing mayhem, which is it's a reasonable explanation. The Loch Ness monster ate all the UFOs. Well, see, Osland, the thing is, the government loves that stuff about everything being fakeable, because if things get out they don't want, they can just say it's fake. Well, how can you tell? It's pretty hard for your average layperson to figure out a doctored image. How would you know? It's. I mean, I made a mistake this evening. I put up a quote, which I knew the quote, and I just assumed it was from Winston Churchill. It turns out it wasn't, and so I got roundly told off on the internet this afternoon for putting up a quote that wasn't from Winston Churchill, that I thought was from Winston Churchill. So people can make mistakes, right? That's perfectly normal, and you have to tell things apart. How can I tell an image of a flying saucer is fake? I don't know. How would you do it nowadays? Years ago it was harder to fake photography because you didn't have the computer to manipulate it. But today, you can't trust anything really, and it all comes down to the reputation of the source. So that's a tricky one. Not exactly a UFO, but I once saw what looked like a dark vertical line going up from the horizon to the top of the sky. After checking the internet, I found it was the shadow of a contrail, but without Google, I didn't know what I'd have thought. Yeah, and that's the thing. So sometimes I've seen strange shadows in the sky that look like perfectly straight lines. You think, what the heck on earth is causing that? And sometimes it's just a configuration of meteorological things that have weird effects. That's pretty good. Don't believe everything you see on the internet, said Abraham Lincoln. Exactly right. So you eliminate the vaguely plausible, airplanes, drones, meteorological phenomena, astronomical phenomena, things seen out of context. And then you get down to the kind of interesting stuff, which is quite a few of them seems to have been military related, i.e., is a missile test that's gone wrong, and various other bits like that. Now, I think it's likely that there are military and top secret things flying around in our combined airspaces that we, the poor civilians, don't know anything about. I get that there are military secrets and there are military capabilities and all sorts of things like that. I don't want to go too far down the they're keeping things from us kind of stuff, but they are keeping some stuff from us, because that's what they do, right? I don't know how much, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were a few sort of top secret stealth airplanes and things like that, because there have been stealth airplanes, and maybe even some funky drive technologies which haven't been disclosed to the general populace, so I don't know, clearly not, but that doesn't seem beyond the bounds of possibility. Why the military stroke government as being a bit careless every so often by flying these things in areas where they can be spotted, I'm not sure. Maybe it just goes wrong, or maybe they don't expect people to be in those areas. So I think some of those can be explained by potentially wacky military stuff, but Drew's hat's turning from fabric to anime. I've got it's lined on the inside with tinfoil. So I think there's some stuff. Now, beyond that, is there stuff happening in the atmosphere of the Earth that we don't understand? Well, quite possibly yes. We always get caught out by weird stuff that we just haven't necessarily encountered before. The ball lightning thing is quite an interesting one. It's a very unusual kind of effect, which nobody's really been able to capture very well, and certainly hasn't been able to kind of simulate as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, so I mean, the US government must have loved the UFO Nazi at Area 51, who thought it was all UFOs, so people don't actually find anything useful about the test flight. Yeah, so maybe it's quite a good cover. So I think the vast majority of it can be, can be kind of wrapped up in that. I mean, it makes for fun storytelling, and I love the idea. Okay. Yeah, and don't forget the entire UFO scare of the 50s and 60s was a disinformation exercise. Yeah, so they could be playing all sorts of social games with us, and who knows what's going on really. I mean, when you get super cynical about things and super kind of skeptical, you wonder if the whole COVID thing or aspects of it was all disinformation as well. So you can get very very, very paranoid about these things if you're not careful. Alan says, I believe almost anything before I believe that something in the sky was an alien spaceship. And I think I would share your view on that one, Alan, because the chances of there being an alien spaceship are vanishingly small. Because you've got to ask yourself, okay, so if there is an alien spaceship hanging above, I don't know, London or something, or actually just hanging around, in an isolated part of the UK, or choose your country, okay, and why is it there? Is the first question you got to ask. Why have the aliens come to Earth? What for what purpose are they? Why are they flying low enough in the atmosphere to be seen? What is their purpose? The chances of anything coming from Mars, it's way smaller than that. Why would the aliens be there? Chris is exactly right. The time to believe something is when there's a sufficient amount of good evidence. Why would the aliens be there? What would they be doing in their spaceship, stroke flying saucer, whatever, hanging low down in the atmosphere? That's a question. Is that what would their motives be? Carl Sturtbecker, because it's funny TV to look at Earth. Maybe it's that's right. Maybe it's an amazing pastime. It's kind of like what's that TV show? I'm a celebrity. Get me out of here. I'm an alien on a backward planet. Get me out of here. Maybe we're just we're lower form of life, and we're just entertainment for the far more sophisticated alien civilizations that have got interstellar warp drives, and rather than do anything useful with interstellar warp drives, all they do is muck about and make TV shows about backward alien planets that don't yet have intergalactic travel. I don't know. It's obvious why aliens visit Earth. It's the only place you can get Vegemite. So I mean, I'd love there to be an alien contact, but I think it's vanishingly unlikely. I mean, we've talked about things like the Drake equation before, haven't we? And it's not really an equation; it's more sort of a probability calculator. You take the number of stars and the number of stars with planets, the number of planets that are habitable, and the number of planets that might have. Are able to be around for long enough to support life, the amount of life that then becomes intelligent, and the number drops pretty drastically. And then even if you've got and it depends on the numbers, and we've been able to refine those a little bit over the years, but the error margins are quite large. And even if you're quite generous, you end up with maybe a few hundred civilizations splashed across the galaxy, which sounds like quite a lot, okay? And it is, it's really exciting that there could be, 1, 2, 3, dozens, hundreds, thousands of intelligent alien civilizations out there that we potentially could have a conversation with. But we get back to this really irritating speed of light problem, don't we? That we can't talk to them. If the nearest one, the galaxy is a big thing. And forget any other galaxy; they're too far away. So just our galaxy. Then even if a civilization is relatively close by, and by relatively I mean a few hundred light years, that's not really any use to us, is it? We can't have a conversation with 100, 200, 300, 400 year delay in the conversation. That would get really irritating, wouldn't it? I mean, it's bad enough over just a few seconds on your mobile phone when you get a satellite link up. What? Pardon? Keep interrupting each other. With a 400 year gap, I mean, it's going to be impossible to hold a sensible conversation, isn't it? So there's that distance and communication issue in terms of just kind of doing that. And then there's a case of, okay, well, like if either an intelligent civilization had managed to figure a way of bypassing the speed of light, or they've come an awfully long way for some reason. What would be the compelling reason to actually travel through space? To go and visit. I mean, much as I love Star Trek, and boldly going where nowhere has gone before, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go, all that sort of stuff, it's a big undertaking if you haven't got some kind of warp drive and you can't get there in time for next week's episode, isn't it? It's extremely tedious. So if they're out there, they'll be extinct before we get to talk to them. Well, you can't have a conversation between civilizations with a 400,000 to 800,000 year gap between conversations. That doesn't really make sense. Latency would be rubbish. How's your internet? And we haven't been around for long enough. A few 100,000 years, as Glenn points out, a tiny blip in the time to encounter some other civilization. The chances of the chances of being able to have any kind of sensible communication, let alone technological interchange of some kind, unless we've missed something very, very fundamental, and this is a possibility, unless we've missed something very, very fundamental with the laws of physics, and all the other alien civilizations are going around. Look at those guys on the Earth. They still haven't figured it out yet. They still think the speed of light is an immutable barrier. Lol. Could just imagine some sort of pan-galactic internet where everybody is just talking around, and there's this one planet. But they basically haven't picked up the two pieces of string and connected them. Everyone's going, I just can't believe it. They haven't figured it out yet. Lol. And maybe the Earth is like on the pan-galactic internet. The Earth is just a meme going, lol, backward planet. I don't know. That would be quite interesting. So beam the first 20 minutes of this stream into space and they would think we were mad. Well, that's right, we'll be that planet's obsessed with something called Vegemite. I don't think we ought to go there. So unless the age of the universe determines the time needed for life to evolve and advance, and say, well, you see, that's an interesting question actually, Glenn. Going slightly more serious for a moment, is that we know the universe is what 13.8 billion years? Is that right? Ish. Okay. Ish. Plus or minus a bit. I think that's right. Is it 13.8 billion years or is it 14? I mean, well, what's a billion years between friends, right? Since the Big Bang, ish. Okay, that's how long since the Big Bang. Now, the first generation of stars were composed only of hydrogen and a bit of helium. Okay, so the first generation of stars wouldn't have had any planets. So you need those big first generation stars to do their thing, go supernova, so they can generate some heavier elements like carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, all the good stuff, and iron and so on and so forth. So there is actually some raw material to build some planets of. So the first civilizations that had a chance to exist would be from second generation stars, which does limit the amount of time you've got to evolve a civilization. Now, depending on how that civilization works, it could be still be plus minus billions of years. We exist on this planet. Human beings come from, evolved from ape-like creatures, which are mammals, and we evolved from under the shadow of the dinosaurs only 65 million years ago. Okay, 65 million years ago, you and me were little shrew-like creatures just running around fighting over Vegemite. And the only reason we're here is by a lucky accident of fate, really, kind of random chances. So how long would a potentially productive planet require in order to generate a life form that is capable of building a radio telescope is an impossible question to answer, because it's only by lucky happenstance that humanity has ended up where it is, in the position where it is. There have been lots of other successful life forms on the Earth, but as far as we know, none of them have ever invented a radio telescope before. And we just don't know the statistical likelihood for a given planet to generate a culture that can build a radio telescope. We just don't know. It's really, really hard. And Alan's quite right. So yes, the number of stars in the observable universe is about 1 million times the number of seconds since the formation of the universe. So we haven't got enough time to check them out. That's very good. Feather of the Crows is a very tedious RTS game, especially if you start from first generation stars. You have to wait forever for your first units to spawn. The RNG sucks. Such is life. And the dinosaurs were here for millions of years. So I think the dinosaurs started about 220 million years ago and lasted up to only 65 million years ago. So they had several million years on the planet to get their act together, and they never invented a radio telescope. Okay, so dinosaurs just too dumb. So JL98 is quite right. So on the Earth, it's taken 3.7 billion years for a bunch of chemicals, lying in a rock pool somewhere, to turn into, intelligent apes that can build a radio telescope. That's how long it took on the Earth. But is that reasonable? Okay, could it have happened much faster than that? It could have happened. So let's take the dinosaurs. Let's say 220 million years ago there were some mammal-like creatures on the Earth, and the dinosaurs didn't get the upper hand. Then humanity could potentially have come into being millions of years ago. Okay, it's not beyond the bounds of probability that we could have done. And it's not entirely impossible. It's unlikely, but it's not entirely impossible that there wasn't a sapient, sentient species on the Earth before us, but that all trace of it has been lost for whatever reason. That would be quite a discovery if we found out something like that. But humanity could, have existed millions of years ago, as if the evolution of life on Earth had turned out a bit differently. That's right. So take all the mass extinction events, exactly. So it could, so if it could happen millions of years ago on the Earth, if there's another Earth-like world out there, which it seems reasonable to suspect there was, the chances, again, chances of anything, keep using that, it's very singable. The chances of us lining up, i.e. humanity coming into existence at the same time as another comparable technical civilization, seems to me to be vanishingly small. Either they would still be, small rodents fighting over the Marmite somewhere, or they'd be several million years ahead of us. The chances of us actually ending up with, actually your technology is about the same as us. We're still on USB-C. Oh, you're on USB-C. Well, actually, we moved to USB-E, but that, we've got some backward compatibility with you human guys. We'll be all right. It's not going to be like that, is it? The chances of being technologically comparable seem to me, again, to be vanishingly small. Either they have no understanding of technology at all, and they're still fighting over fruits, and the dinosaurs are stomping around on their planet, or they're a million years ahead of us. I mean, and a million years of technological, assuming they're still there, they still exist, a million years of technological sophistication, unbridgeable gap as far as I'm concerned. They, if they're still around and they have technology of that level, we can't even begin to approach or imagine what they would be capable of with that sort of level of technology. I just don't know. They could already be here. They could already be gone. They could already be, there could be a pangalactic civilization of some kind that we can't recognise because we're too primitive to even look at it. And didn't even invent digital watches, though, those dumb dinosaurs. So humanity might not have evolved without the appearance of grass. Yes, well, yeah, there's lots of observations like that sort of stuff. We needed the grasslands to exist in. And we don't know if mankind will survive the next 200,000 years, let alone next, or even the next 1,000 years, because we're quite a warlike thing. So all that sort of stuff, to my mind, reduces the likelihood of aliens turning up in flying saucers to so minusculely small that it's just it's not even worth considering. They could have been here for the whales. They could have been. So that kind. I mean, I would love there to be, Star Trek-y style aliens where everybody seems to be within that's one of the things about Star Trek is virtually everybody, with a few exceptions obviously, virtually everybody in the Star Trek universe seems to be within maybe a few decades or at worst a few centuries of the same technological level. Everyone's got roughly the same kind of sciencey capabilities. With a few variations, and a lot of sci-fi is like that actually. I mean, Star Wars as well. Star Wars is a bit more sort of fantasy, but you look at all of the creatures in the Star Wars universe, and they're mostly they're a bit more exotic than the Star Trek ones because they've got a bigger budget, but they're mostly an awful lot of them are bipedal, aren't they? And they've got they're kind of. They've got a nose and two eyes and a face. There's a few with extra eyes and stuff, obviously, and stuff like that. But by and large, they're quite they're kind of familiar kind of aliens. Wintermute said they're observing their version of the primary. Now that does appeal to me. That they're actually all of us are constantly being scrutinised. I mean, this is quite an uncomfortable thought, isn't it? All of us are constantly being scrutinised by some alien intelligence above us who's keeping an eye on the Earth. But we're so laughably primitive that we're basically kind of under a microscope, and they're just waiting to see what happens. We are being observed, but this intergalactic prime directive applies that you don't muck about with primitive primitive life forms like us, would we know? Okay. Except for Q. So Q is an interesting one in the in Star Trek, of course. As I recall, says Shadow Wyvern, at the end of their long reign, the smartest dinosaurs had only managed to evolve the potential intelligence for modern day chimp, though no one can be sure from fossils. So that's dinosaurs definitely had potential because they almost they had that upright stance, didn't they? Some of the later ones, the non-sauropod types, theropod type things. And there are a lot of birds around, like magpies and things that are like super smart, for birds. Probably smarter than quite a few humans actually, but and it doesn't take much stretch of the imagination to see a sort of sapient, sentient dinosaur creature becoming a thing. So you could see evolutionary pressures potentially doing that, and Glenn says, question is, if there are that many creatures in a galactic civilization, maybe some of them were uplifted by higher tech civilization. That's an interesting thing as well. What we tend to have, and most of our apocalyptic science fiction, I'm thinking H.G. Wells is the start one, and some of the silly stuff like Independence Day and all those various bits and pieces. The aliens turn up. They're technologically superior to us, but they're not completely and utterly unrecognisably technologically superior to us. They still require ships, and they've still got recognisable weapons. Okay, they might be like super much more powerful than ours, and they might have defensive force fields and all that kind of good stuff compared to us. And obviously we'll always good old humanity will always find the single exploitable flaw in their defence, which we will use to great aplomb with many gung ho phrases and down the alien invaders. That's a given. But the alien civilizations in most of our science fiction are super advanced, but not like crazily super advanced that we can't even recognise. The only types of film, and there are several books, but the only types of film that where the aliens are so kind of above and beyond us that they're almost their motivations are kind of almost impossible to understand. Things like 2001, Arthur C. Clarke, where the aliens are just a black slab, and or that's a device left by the aliens. And they're you know what they're attempting to achieve. I mean, who the hell knows? They're aliens, right? So you know, so that sort of stuff I think is quite. I think you know, our intelligence, if that's what it is, has been, you know, been born out of our evolutionary history. Now, the evolutionary history of an alien race would be very, very different to ours, you know, just have different priorities. I mean, our priorities as human beings seem to be expand as much as possible, consume as much as possible, and don't worry about the future. It seems to be how humanity works. Aliens may have different values. So that's really weird. And the 1,000 light years. I'll back up. Dunpeel, yeah. Okay, I'm going back up. The fact that our planet is not colonised is a powerful argument that we might be the first intelligent life. So that's Let's pick up on that one, Lucky Luigi, because that is a very good comment. In the sense that could it be, my fellow humans, that we are the first intelligent civilization ever to have looked up into space and gone, wow, we exist. I wonder if there's anything else going on out there. It's somebody has to be first, right? Let's just confine it to our galaxy, because as we understand the laws of physics right now, we're never going to get to any of the other galaxies. So the galaxy is big enough to just be. Let's just think about our galaxy. It could be. It is an absolute definite possibility that humanity is the first sapient creature to ever look up into space in our galaxy and go, we exist. Somebody has to be first. Somebody does have to be first. That is an absolute definite possibility. It could be us. We are the ancients. Yeah, exactly. It's us. We are the old ones. So that's an interesting possibility to consider. Because if we look at how, let's take a conservative estimate of the number of stars in the galaxy. It's somewhere between 100,000 million and 400,000 million. We don't really know. So, I mean, that's a lot of stars, right? And a lot of potential habitable places. But if we really put our minds to it as humanity, okay, let's say we decided that we put aside I know this is total science fiction, but we put aside all our political differences and we put aside all the everything else, and decided our purpose in this universe is to colonize the galaxy. Okay, we haven't got super warp drives or anything like that. We just got modification of the technology that we have today. Okay, so how long would it take us to build a ship capable of going to the nearest star? Okay, maybe if we really, really, really put our minds to it, let's say we could build a ship in 50 years. Okay, then it needs to get there. Okay, let's assume we can get it up to a reasonable fraction of the speed of light, and then deaccelerate it when we get there, so the ship can make it. Let's say 100 years. Okay, let's say 100 years to travel to the nearest star. Then we've got to set up a colony. Okay, and do some stuff when we get there, right? So let's take a bit of time to do that. Let's say there's another 100 years before we can get that established, to the point where we could start thinking about building another ship, okay, to keep going, right? So the idea being that we're hopping from planet to planet, okay, through space. So let's say it takes 500 years for each generation ships to move on to the next planet. How long would it take for us, therefore, if we expand out from Sol, doing that, hop to the next star along every 500 years in a direction, how long would it take us to colonize the entire galaxy? And the answer is not as big as you think, because if you give the possibility that actually we send off one to Alpha Centauri, we send off another one to Sirius, and so on and so forth. Even with the technology that we have today, extrapolating a bit for the art of the possible and stuff, it wouldn't take us more than a few million years to do that. Okay, it wouldn't take us more, even with today's technology refined a bit for the purposes, it wouldn't take us more than a few million years to do that. Okay, so if that is a goal for a civilization or a creature or whatever it happens to be that evolves the capability to do so, where we currently kind of are, a few million years is all it's going to take. All right, of hard work and determined action. There's no doubt about it, and the willingness to do so. And that's assuming, and Sean's quite right. That's assuming the technology stays constant. Okay, which it won't. It will get better. So it might be even faster. So we might be able to do the colonization of the entire galaxy in under 1 million years. Now, if that's the case, for a really, really determined species, and we're pretty, we can be pretty determined at times. Once there's a reason for doing so, i.e., we can make some money out of it. Then it's not all that long. Set against the history of the length of time that is available for us to do that sort of stuff in. So if anybody has a few million years head start on us, the question is, why aren't they here? Why haven't we already been subjugated? And that's an interesting question, right? Do civilizations manage? That's assuming it's all successful, of course, which is unlikely to be. There's going to be the odd setback, but the possibility is there. The possibility is there. Would we survive as a species? Could we survive? I don't know the answer to those questions. It's a simulation, says Man vs. Pixels. It's not real. Or we are the last ones. Maybe we're the last civilization. Everyone else has come and gone before us. Oh, Earth! Oh, yeah, they're way behind. They won't be ready for a few billion years yet. Don't worry about them. If the nearest intelligent aliens lived on the galaxy 10 million light years away, how would we ever know? So, crossing between... Well, this is the thing, you see. If you can accelerate to the speed of light, or at least, close to the speed of light, then, of course, time for you becomes amazingly compressed. Even if time is passing at a high rate, from a different frame of reference. So, you can cross the galaxy in a few decades from your perspective, even though an awful long time, 10,000 years has passed from somebody else's perspective. So, you can fast forward into the future and travel amazing distances if you can get close to the speed of light. So that's all quite interesting stuff. Whether or not that helps you to colonize the galaxy, I'm not entirely sure. It might take a long time. And would we even be humans by the time we accomplish that? I don't know. And a few million years, but that is, and Glenn's quite right. So a few million years, that is well more than the time we've existed by orders of magnitude. Will we even last that long? Will we still even be us? So would we have branched out into different species by the fact that we're in? You can't really figure out the ramifications of that kind of exploration. Sometimes I think of all Elon's efforts are just him trying to get home. Elon, phone home. How long have we got before the sun burns up? Well, I think we got a billion years or so, haven't we, before the sun goes boom? I think we're about 50% of the way through its life, so I think we've got a couple of billion years. So there's plenty of time for us to get on out there and take over the galaxy. And the average lifetime of a G-type star is about 10 billion years, so we're already halfway into it. So so we've got 5 billion years to get our act together. So I don't know. That is it's the fundamental mystery to me of space and time and all those kind of things, is that it doesn't seem all that implausible that life could exist elsewhere in the universe. It seems to be like an accident waiting to happen. You and I, as humans, the dogs and cats and spiders and everything else that lives on our planet. I'm speaking mostly of my house here. There's nothing special about what we're made of. Okay, we're just carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, a few other bits and pieces. The elements that make us are utterly commonplace. There's nothing weird and wacky about the materials of which we are composed. So, those elements exist everywhere, and in big quantities. Now, are there places in the universe that are sufficiently pleasant that life can exist? It seems undeniable. The chances are that there would be. How often does life get to multicellular complexity, i.e. big things? That requires that sort of oxygen change in an environment. Is it possible to have high energy creatures without oxygen? Well, it's not on the Earth. Is it elsewhere? All these questions are interesting things. Do all large, fast-moving creatures require oxygen? Question. So that sort of stuff. Dinger B92 says, one of the reasons why we haven't met anyone is because of the dark forest theory. I don't know what's the dark forest theory. Let me know about that. I haven't come across that one. The cockroaches will have evolved and replaced us by then. Well, they might. I mean, yeah, maybe. And allegedly the sun will die in another 10 billion years ago. Yeah, that's so. There are some time limits, but 10 billion years is a pretty long time. Topic for the night stream: How do we take over the galaxy, and how long would it take us? Yeah, so I even with our current technology, I think only a few million years. If humanity could keep itself together, which is a big ask, and even if assuming our technology didn't advance much further, but it would, the galaxy could be colonized by our descendants within a few million years. It's just a matter of numbers. It does, despite the huge distances and despite the massive obstacles there, if you add a lot of time to that equation, it solves itself. Shadow Wyvern says the universe is so big, intelligent life must exist elsewhere. Due to its size, neither of them or us will probably be able to discover the other's bones. Well, I think that's more likely. I would be, it would be interesting to know if, when we get out there, we discover the ruins of another civilization. Going back to space games that we probably won't mention too much more. The Guardians, another intelligent, civilization that's been extinct for 2 million years, kind of makes sense, doesn't it? It does kind of make sense. Politics was getting away long before we got far. So yeah. See, the problem is then you wouldn't all be from Earth, would you? There'd be the Alpha Centaurians and the Syrians and the Barnard Starians and all those sort of things, and they'd all have different agendas. And who gets to settle the XYZ planet? It'd end up in the massive, great big interstellar war again, wouldn't it? Undoubtedly. But we can but hope. Okay, so Glenn says the dark forest theory holds that civilizations fear one another so much that they don't dare reveal themselves, lest they immediately be considered a potential threat and destroyed. Okay, so that's quite interesting. And Dinger DB's come back. Based on the Fermi hypothesis it inspired, it takes its name. The universe is a dark forest. Every civilization is an armed hunter stalking through the trees like a ghost, gently pushing aside branches that block the way and trying to tread without sound. So we don't want to be discovered in case there's somebody else out there doing the same thing. And there are already Syrians, yeah. So, yes, of course there are. I'm thinking of serious Syrians. Really, really serious Syrians. Dear. But we don't have to build spaceships to go to the other side of the galaxy. It only takes 250 million years for our system to orbit to the other side of the galaxy. So there's another thing, yeah. Kelly Baglass says, but you say, and it's quite right, intelligent life must have first evolved somewhere, so why not here? We could be the first. This could be it. You, me on this stream tonight could be the pinnacle of human achievement ever in the entire known universe. It's not impossible. So I don't know what I think about that one. Could we actually be the first sapient civilization? We're number one. Yeah, it is a possibility. We're doomed. And Sean says, being as we've been beaming out radio signals in space for a long time, I think that if anyone was listening, they would know we were here. Well, only within 100 light year radius, of course, because when was radio invented and punched through the atmosphere at sufficient strength? So probably early 20th century, right? Maybe a few got crackles a bit before that. So if alien civilizations are beyond 100 light years, there's nothing to hear yet, unless they've got some kind of wacky faster than light capability, in which case we have no idea how that works. Keep banging the rocks together, guys. That's right. And Alan's quite right. So we're a sample of one. We are a sample of one, so it's hard to draw any firm conclusion. It's really, really difficult. And I flip-flop from actually no, we're utterly alone in these. And Arthur C. Clarke, as usual, said it best. There are two possibilities. We are either alone in this universe, or we aren't, and both are equally terrifying, which I think is an excellent way of looking at it. Yeah, that's one of those really kind of thought-provoking. If we're alone, what does that mean? We are masters of the entire universe. If we're not alone, however, that means there is another intelligence out there which we have yet to encounter. Which has its own agenda. What the hell are those guys doing? So that's why we're being left alone. So I don't know. It's good fodder for science fiction stories. You can see why it's so compelling, because those kind of first contact things. But I just really can't see that first contact would be a meaningful event for us, because either we are going to discover the ruins of some ancient civilization that died out millions of years before us, or we're going to be trying to interview a bunch of small rodents on this planet going, so what do you think about the universe? And they're going to go that's going to be the sum total of our communication, if they could even do that. So I don't know. The chances of having similar civilizations that are on a similar enough technical level that they can actually have a meaningful conversation, I don't know, it just doesn't seem likely to me. They're there, but they can't hear our radio signals because sublight technology is deprecated. What, it's like you're still using sublight technology? Really? You could just sort of imagine that. And it makes me wonder whether or not clangers, yeah. That's how you communicate with aliens. So is there an absolute raft of physics that we have yet to even perceive? It's interesting to see where we've come from. So if you go back to the kind of the 18th and 19th century, when we were figuring out magnetism and electromagnetism, and we were figuring out electricity, and we were figuring out the fundamentals of Newtonian gravity, and we thought we'd got it all right. And they did that Michelson-Morley experiment when they were trying to detect the aether, and it's probably the most famous experiment where the negative result was fundamental to the future understanding of how things work, because they basically electromagnetic radiation, it's a wave, it's traveling through some sort of medium, like sound travels through air, and etc. So what medium is it that the stuff's traveling through? And they basically postulated this aether, which was some sort of weird wacky stuff that permeated everything and allowed light to travel through it as a wave. But that experiment showed that the aether didn't exist. There wasn't a wave, which cracked open the possibilities of special relativity and general relativity. It opened us into this entirely wacky world where actually it turns out Newtonian physics isn't true. And now we've got Einstein, all that kind of stuff, and now we've got the standard model and all that kind of stuff, and we've got that understanding. But Is there another level of understanding of the way the universe is, just waiting to be cracked open, and everyone's going to go, oh yeah, Newtonian physics gone, Einsteinian relativity, oh well, that was quite a quaint theory, but yeah, that's what they believed back in the 21st century. Lol, is there going to be a whole new? Oh no, yeah. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we can now postulate doing that Could it be that communicating with radio waves is so laughably primitive by some extraterrestrial standard that nobody would seriously consider doing it? We're only doing it because it's the most advanced form of technology that we've got. But for an alien civilization, could it be, oh well, electromagnetism? Yeah. We remember doing that back several million years ago. Yeah. It's like it's like us using smoke signals to try and use the internet. It just doesn't compute. And maybe communicating with radio waves or something. Stop making that noise. And the aether, the aether and stuff, the luminiferous aether was a fantastic and a very sensible. When you hear about it, it makes perfect sense. And unfortunately, it's just wrong. Which has been many the death of a jolly good theory. Unfortunately, it just turns out to be wrong, which is really annoying if it's your theory. So I don't know. Maybe electromagnetic radiation is just a really, really clumsy, backwards, stupid way of trying to communicate, and we just don't know any different because we haven't discovered a better way of doing it yet. You cannot change the laws of physics, but you can ignore them. Soul Shinery is here. Good evening, Mr. Wagar. Good to see you. And so I don't know. Could it be that there's an entire tranche of physics out there that we just have no concept, and then suddenly we'll crack it, and we'll discover that some new level of environment is permeated by FTL communications, and it's like, look, the Earthlings have finally figured it out. Welcome to the universe. With this like sort of pan-galactic internet that we suddenly get to sign up to. Welcome the Earthlings. Welcome aboard, guys. Yeah. If you could just reset your password. And is the idea of a carbon-based life form even conceivable? Well, that's an interesting. We've touched upon that in the stream before, haven't we? With is carbon, because all life on Earth, I think I'm right in saying, somebody will correct me if I'm not, but all life on Earth is carbon based, okay? Because carbon is a really rather unusual element in that it reacts with lots and lots of other stuff to make complicated molecules. It seems to be pretty much the only element in the periodic table that can do that. Silicon can do some stuff, but carbon is so versatile. It can react with so many different other elements to form so many complicated molecules. It's hard to see how any other life form could, any kind of other chemistry could take place with the necessary complexity to form life, because carbon is just brilliantly good at it. You can't make something like DNA, as far as we can tell, from any other base element, unless it's carbon. It just don't have the complexity of chemical reactions to do so. So I don't know. That thinking of the short story, they're made out of meat. Yes, I've read that one. It's a good story. It's a good thought piece, that one. It's quite likely that there is, and that it's responsible for things like dark energy, vacuum energy, and the missing parts of the connection. So there's an awful lot about physics that we don't understand. We know that, so there could be all sorts of weird and one ways. There's no way that carbon could form the correct chemical bonds to create life. So we've got to be a bit careful, of course, because we're obviously highly prejudiced being carbon-based life forms, aren't we? But from chemistry is chemistry everywhere in the universe. So it's not unreasonable to look at that with quite a reasonable degree of skepticism. I think that carbon seems to be one of the best ways, possibly the only way, to construct complicated life forms. It's not a guarantee. But there aren't many other elements that can actually do what carbon... In fact, there aren't any other elements that can do what carbon can do. If dinosaurs were still around, aside from the birds, would we be able to communicate with them? Well, yeah, I mean, it depends what you mean by communicate, really, because I mean, I can sort of communicate with my dog, for example. And my dog, being a Labrador, is not the most highly intelligent of all creatures. But it can understand quite a lot of stuff, and I don't see any reason why a dinosaur or a bird wouldn't. Birds can be trained, that's for sure. So there's no reason why a dinosaur couldn't understand some stuff. Whether it could work in a department store, I don't know. That would be quite good. Velociraptors in the complaints department. Life using other forms of chemistry has been proposed in science fiction. I mean, it's shown up in Star Trek. There was the Horta creature, wasn't there, which was silicon based, I think, which is good sci-fi, because silicon is a can do some stuff. Soul Shinery, have you heard about the thought experiment about encoding genetics in cosmic strings with magnetic monopoles? I haven't. No, that one sounds fascinating. So there is that inflection point as well. We're potentially approaching it on Earth. Is that the technology that we create becomes so sophisticated that it takes over. Sort of technical singularity, where computers themselves, machinery, becomes self-aware and then takes over. So maybe it's possible that carbon-based life does give way to manufactured silicon-based life, and maybe that's just an evolutionary thing. That there's a possibility there. Technological singularity. That's interesting. So all that sort of stuff is kind of sitting there in the background. But if there was flipping it back on, to the subject of the time it takes, if there was another carbon-based life form out there that had its own technological singularity millions of years ago and created a master machine race that took over, did its thing, that machine race, would be capable of colonizing the galaxy pretty darn quickly. Let's assume everything goes wrong for humanity and the computers do take over in a few thousand years, and the computers then decide to settle the galaxy. Then, without needing to worry about the limitations of biology, smart computers can send themselves out throughout the galaxy, within a few 100,000 years again. So, again, where are they? This is the thing. So it really makes me wonder whether we are the first. In this galaxy, let's say. Or the machine race is running the universe simulation we live in. Yeah, they say it's. Are we inside the Matrix? I don't know. FE on 1983. The reason Google switched to AI networks because last thing they decoded was humans looking at and created so sophisticated language that no one could decode it. Yeah, I heard about that one, that the Google AI was starting to talk to each other and nobody knew what they were saying. So somebody switched it off pretty darn quick. Are we close to that technological singularity? Possible. It's possible. Based on quantum, it's getting very technical now this late in the evening. Based on quantum field theory, all particles would have to behave the same regardless of where they are in the universe. And if they're not, then we've got an expanding bubble of vacuum decay on our hands. The universe is about to end. So I think there's lots of things. So what's going to happen in the future? And this, again, coming back to a writing thing. These are all the fears that we have. Okay, so are we going to be invaded by aliens? It's a possibility. Are we going to be taken over by machine beings? It's a possibility. Are we the first? It's a possibility. All that kind of good stuff. Is carbon the only way to make a sapient life form? Are we the invading aliens? Yeah, exactly. Was there a precursor civilization on the Earth that achieved technological heights that's been lost and eradicated? It's not impossible for there to have been a previous civilization. Okay, now let's just say that civilization was extremely careful and didn't leave behind any evidence of its existence. It's possible a a precursor civilization left the Earth with highly advanced technology, because reasons, and then what was left on Earth continued to evolve, and we ended up here. It's an interesting story point. Is it likely? I don't know. Interesting story, but how about this one? What if we migrate from Venus to Mars to colonize Earth after we've roomed its atmosphere? Yeah, so there's lots of story ideas that come out of this, and I think this, from a writing perspective, this is what's so good about science fiction, so we can explore what do these ideas mean, what are the implications of them, and so on and so forth. At the end of the last ice age, sea levels rose and would have wiped out any civilization on the coast. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, Alan. And in fact, many people have calculated that the vast majority of the evidence of our civilization, let's say if humans stopped existing today, we all just vanished for some strange reason, how long would it take nature to destroy all the evidence of us having been here? So it depends what you mean by evidence. If you mean structures, it would only take a few thousand years before our cities were effectively ground down to dust and destroyed. Plate tectonics and vegetation would ensure that the vast majority of it was pretty much impossible to find. Might there be would there be some buried artifacts if you knew where to look? Probably there would be. But most of the evidence of humanity after, let's say, 1 million years of not being touched, would be radioactive trace elements and the thin layer of debris. Basically, it's like, what's this stuff? It's like loads and loads of plastic everywhere across the planet in a really, really thin layer. That's what there would be. That's all that's all. A few thousand years, yes, we'd survive, but some evidence would survive. But once you get beyond, a few 100,000 years, nothing we've built that would get destroyed. All that kind of stuff. So, if there had been a precursor civilization 100 million years ago, we wouldn't expect to find any evidence of it, really. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. We can't prove it one way or the other. So that's quite interesting. It's the shoe event horizon. That's right. All the shoe shops take over. So I don't know. There's all sorts of possibilities, and that's what's so good about science fiction, is we can explore those possibilities, this sort of thing. But going back to the topic of the UFOs, I don't think it's very likely there are alien flying saucers flapping out, probing people and taking people up into their spaceships and all that kind of stuff. I think that's pretty unusual. So I think it probably plays more to our psychological fears of the unknown than it does for anything else. Again, Gian, you're quite right. Fossilization is so rare that we're lucky enough to know anything. The number of species we do know about is a tiny proportion of the things that have probably lived on this planet. And we just don't have any evidence for anything else. Maybe one day we'll dig up something really, really unusual and surprising. Or maybe we'll find something unusual and surprising on another planet somewhere out there in space. Who knows? But at the moment, we just don't have evidence. All we have is supposition, and that's all we've ever had on this planet. And the tantalizing thing for, I suppose, the generation or the technological era that we live in now today is only within the last 100 years have we actually had anything approaching the capability of getting out there and actually having a look. When I was a child back in the 70s, we had no good images of the planets in the solar system, let alone anything beyond that. I remember the textbooks of my youth having pictures of Uranus and Neptune, and they were just star-like blobs in the books, and that was the best photographs that anybody had. And even Jupiter and Saturn weren't great. We knew Saturn had rings, but we didn't know what the rings were composed of. And so the early pioneer spacecraft in the 70s, and then later in the 70s, the Voyagers, totally revolutionised our understanding of the solar system. And that seems so close by now compared to everything else that we're considering, it seems laughable we didn't know. But I remember very clearly in the 70s thinking, oh wow, we're gonna see the first ever pictures of some of the planets in our solar system. It was like, It's just being, we take it for granted now because you can just Google them. But back in the 70s, it wasn't the case. And so, just in my lifetime, our knowledge of space and what's in it and how it works and all that sort of stuff has gone up so dramatically. It's unbelievable, really. And if we go another 50 years into the future, okay, I probably won't be around to enjoy it, but the amount of knowledge that we're going to have, the technological capability that we can do. I mean, I can take literally, using computer-aided cameras and a relatively simple telescope from my backyard today. I can take pictures that rival the big observatories of the 1950s easily. Okay, that's how far technology has come on. And so when you multiply that out by state-of-the-art space telescopes like the James Webb Telescope that's about to go into space and hopefully do some useful stuff, the amount of stuff that we're going to find out in the next few decades is astonishing. It's going to be absolutely mind-blowing. So that's quite interesting. So I wouldn't be so quick to assume that, Drew. Hope for life extending and digital augmentation techs. Well, it's always assuming I want them. I may be quite happy to go to my eternal rest. Thank you very much. We'll see how it goes. I don't know what I think. Well, maybe that's a topic for another week. Okay, let's think about life extension and what that would mean, because there's too many people on the planet already without extending our lives, isn't it? Let's wait and see. Let's debate that another week. That'd be quite good. Jian, it wasn't long ago that our best images of Pluto was just a couple of greyish pixels. That's exactly right. That sort of stuff. Sean wants to be uploaded. Soul Shiner wants to live forever. Cyber hats. I could download myself into a hat. Yes, that's right. We'll discuss that in an upcoming stream. That would be really good. So they'll put the James Webb Telescope into space, and we will scale. It's going to find some fundamentally weird stuff. The James Webb Telescope. That's going to be absolutely fascinating to see what that discovers. And can we just acknowledge how utterly incredible it is that the James Webb Space Telescope is going to be sitting at the Lagrange point on the other side of the moon? Yeah, I mean it's just cool, isn't it? It's going to be amazing. And you can just download the raws from Hubble. You don't even need your telescope to create space photos. No, you don't. Yeah, and the Hubble is not a huge telescope. It's about a meter in diameter, isn't it? But that's pretty darned impressive sitting out in space, and it's done some amazing stuff. And the James Webb Telescope is going to tell us a whole bunch of stuff. I think how big is the James Webb Telescope? I think it's a composite design, isn't it? I off the top of my head I don't know, but it's way bigger. Let's just have a look. Diameter of JWST. Okay, so it's just saying here, James Webb Telescope. So Hubble's aperture is 2.4 meters across, and the James Webb Telescope is 6.5 meters across. So it's a lot bigger. Yep. So that's going to be good. Now, one of the things, just before I go, actually, this evening, one of the things I remember reading about the James Webb Telescope was that it was designed to see mostly in the infrared, and I was like, why do you want to just concentrate on the infrared? I mean, seeing things in infrared is cool and everything, but why doesn't the telescope work in visible light like any other telescope? And I was puzzling over this for quite a while until it clocked with me that one of the things that the reason it's designed to reach into the infrared is simply because it's looking at things that are so far away that the light coming from those things has been stretched into the infrared by the passage of time since it set out. So it started out in the visible spectrum, but because the universe has expanded in all the billions of years since that light's been on the way, that light has now been shifted into the infrared. So we need to build a telescope that looks into the infrared so that we can see stuff that was visible light from such a long distance away. And I was like, that's pretty darn cool. And you're kind of like, okay, yep. There we go. So yeah, people in the chat saying the same thing. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's just mind blowing, isn't it? We're making the telescope see into the infrared so we can see stuff that used to be visible light, but it's so far away. It's changed its frequency. So there we go. Anyway, my friends, I must call it quits there. That's it's been a good discussion tonight. So we've moved all the way from the armistice to Vegemite, through alien UFOs, all the way to the edge of the universe and infrared light. So that's been good. Thank you very much for a really good discussion. Let's talk about the whole longevity thing, okay, and extending our life periods and stuff, because that's interesting perceptions, I think, from people of different ages as to what they think of extending your life. So we'll have a chat about that next week. I think that's going to be good. I'm certainly not Marmite. You're very kind of me, Jan. Thank you very much. So be good, everybody. Have a fantastic weekend. So for those of you who are into your Elite Dangerous, I will be doing my farewell tour. Finally going, he says, at long last. My 07 tour. So that's about 4 weeks of faffing about Elite Dangerous, just to kind of finish it off once and for all, get it out of my system. So hopefully you'll be able to join with that. We are playing Wing Commander 3 on Saturday with the retro stream, and obviously more of this sci-fi and fantasy speculation and discussion. The first part of the final tour, yes, exactly right. Back on Mondays, of course. So the usual 3-part thing: Monday, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So as always, thank you for your company. Have a fantastic week ahead. See you on Thursday if Elite Dangerous is your thing, and otherwise, be good. Right on. Stay safe. Be good. Look after yourselves in that crazy universe, and just think that maybe you indeed are the pinnacle of evolutionary sophistication throughout the entire galaxy. There's a nice thought for a Monday evening, right? Take care, my friends. See you soon, you wonderful creatures in this amazing galaxy. You. Bye bye now.